Good morning, everyone. Families across our area are still trying to recover from those devastating tornadoes. The storms that started in the Mississippi Delta spun and ground their way to Winona and then on to Monroe County. Now, we've got video from Amory Saturday morning. Meteorologist Dylan Hudler took this and with his drone. You can see how widespread the damage is there in Amory. After being here all day and night, meteorologist Ashley Bryant went to Amory Friday night and then to Winona Saturday. Chief Meteorologist Isaac Williams and Dylan were in Amory Friday morning, and all three are joining me at the table today to talk about the storm, the aftermath, the coverage, all of it. Thank you both, all three of you, so much for being here.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Well, let me just begin by saying what an outstanding job you all did Friday night in keeping us informed, keeping us calm, and just getting the information out the way it needs to. It's a tough job.
Yeah, we appreciate it. You know, it's not one that we take lightly ever. You know, we certainly appreciate the trust that the viewers put in us, and it's not something that, again, we ever want to. You know, there's things we get taught in school, and you know, that was a really bad night, and you know, we're certainly sorry for all those that are affected from the storms.
Well, we're going to let you show us the track in a moment, but one of the things that stands out to me is that you all have been telling us several days in advance that it's not looking good for Friday, and you try not to, you know, pinpoint anything, but you always let us know that the possibility is there. So when you're in that moment and like your worst fears confirmed, what's going through your mind, Ashley?
Oh my gosh, I mean, it's crazy. That day when we came in, the three of us had been texting, you know, just kind of confirming with each other the fears and thoughts that we had, you know, previously throughout the week. And we all had this like internal gut feeling that it wasn't going to be just a great night. And so when reality just kind of kicked in there towards the end after it had pushed off to the east, it was just, real reality hitting.
I had the same feeling. We all kind of agreed and thought, you know, at least 2 or 3 days in advance that this has the potential to not be so great. It could be one of those bad nights. And with weather models and things, we knew the weather pattern would be dangerous and volatile, especially in our area that night. And so to get here, to watch it play out, to see it come from the Delta and then come through and do the same damage in our area, it really is like a kick in the gut. You physically feel sick.
Take us through the path, Isaac.
All right, yeah, so this was the same storm that impacted it in Winona, and we'll talk about it. So this was on the ground for almost 37 miles. So when we say a long track tornado potential, unfortunately this was a prime example of that. This is something that stayed on the ground and did not lift for 37 miles. Wow. The path width there, 1,600 yards, which is almost a mile wide. If you think about, you know, how long a mile is, how far a mile is.
Or 16 football fields.
Yeah.
Oh, that puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so this actually started in Chickasaw County, as you can see, just west of US 45 alternate, and it crossed over and it spun up quickly. The damage by the time it got to Wren on US 45 was very significant. And so, and then of course it continued on to Amory, and you can see the path wiggled a little bit. Thankfully, it went a little north of Amory and then south of Smithville.
So you and Dylan right away were in Wren, you know, when it was safe to go. What did you see when you got there?
You know,
My jaw dropped. Nothing prepares you to see that.
You know, structures were collapsed in, you know, walls were collapsed in, cars were thrown, SUVs, you know, were thrown, and it was just
I was describing it to some people that, you know, I saw this damage from drones, you know, from ground level, and it looked like, you know, the piles of debris looked like, you know, somebody had cleared the roadway and piled this stuff up.
Right.
But no, this is what the tornado did.
Right.
Yeah.
On a huge scale.
Yes.
And in the span of 30 seconds. I mean, all it takes 30, 40 seconds for this type of destruction to happen.
It's incredible. I use the word mind-blowing because you truly, nothing prepares you to see this type of damage.
This is a church there in Wren.
Yes, it's extremely hard for your mind to comprehend what power and force it takes to cause this damage.
And you all talk about it all the time, and you talk about 155 mile per hour winds. You can't really wrap your head around that.
Not
until you
deal
live
with it
and
or live in it.
people who've lived through it.
Yeah.
So the Piggly Wiggly and Amory went through a tornado before.
Yeah.
Here we are again. This is what happened.
I know, and I was told that they had just finished a remodel, I think, of sorts, and now that they're not even sure what to do, you know, going forward. I mean, just awful video, and you know that's where the command post was set up, and that's where Dylan and I was starting there. But
we
awful.
knew once you all told us that the tornado was on the ground. We knew that what we would see at first light would be total devastation.
Yeah.
Then our really worst fears were confirmed when we hear that there's a fatality.
Yeah, try as you might, you do everything right, and sometimes it's still just it's not enough, and it's for us as broadcasters and meteorologists, it's something that we hope we never have to deal with, and it never gets any easier, and we just hope that going forward on the next event, whenever that might be, that we just use this as a teaching moment, a learning opportunity. Just, you got to respect Mother Nature, and you got to respect the power.
You look at this video from the National Guard, this is a substantial building.
Yeah.
And this is what happened in a span of seconds.
Yeah. And we talked to somebody, and somebody's truck was blown into a pond, and we thought, and then the airbags were deployed, and we were like, well, how did that happen? And the police officer told me that a gentleman was driving the truck when the tornado just picked him up and deposited the truck with the guy inside in the lake, but they thankfully rescued him, and he didn't,
Well, that's good news.
That was incredible.
Winona, Ashley, I understand you went to Winona shortly after. What did you see when you got there?
I mean, it, like they've been saying, it was heartbreaking. It was very emotional. But the one thing that came out of it, I went with Keely Shields that next morning, and the entire community were in such high spirits.
Really?
It was very strange. And I remember mentioning to Keely, I was like, if I had gone through that, I would not be as good spirited as they are. They were all very thankful. They were alive. They honestly could care less about the material things at that point. They were very thankful that
they had their lives.
Yes. And we spoke to a previous mayor of Winona that had been there for 14 years, and then the most recent mayor, and they were both saying the same thing, that it was so great seeing the community come together and just help everyone figure it out. They had people from a mile or two down the street show up on their street, bringing chainsaws and things to help clear it out.
I will say, having been here over a couple of decades and seen many of these events, most not as severe as this, but a couple, that is the one thing that comes out of these events, is that people really show the true spirit of who they are, and that they're going to, everybody becomes a neighbor in that moment. And we're going to give you some information on ways you can help. But first, it is a helpless feeling when our neighbors are facing heartache and loss. So when we come back, we're going to let you know for sure how you can help. So we'll be right back. These guys are going to stick with us for another segment too. All right, we're back at the table with three meteorologists from the WCBI weather team. Right now, people in Winona and Amory and Wren are at a loss. So we're going to talk a little bit about, next steps to recovery. But before we get there, I was out of town. I'm watching our coverage over Facebook, and I'm following all of you all on Twitter. And suddenly I see all of you tweeting out tornado emergency. And so my immediate thought was, what is the difference between, what is a tornado emergency?
Well, inherently, a tornado is an emergency.
Sure. Right.
But basically, the new warning system that the Weather Service has designed is they're basically three tiers of warnings. There's the base tornado warning, then there's the confirmed tornado warning, and then there's the emergency. So the emergency basically is reserved for the worst case scenario.
Okay.
And it's when the Weather Service truly believes a strong to violent tornado is moving into a focused population center.
Okay.
And they are, tornadoes are rare anyway, but tornado emergencies are
And
even
it doesn't
rarer.
feel like that if you live here. That
No, I know.
Honestly.
But they are indeed.
Yeah, they are. And Dylan, like you said, we all were, it's important when we get into that sort of situation, something that we've never done before in our coverage. I called for our web people in the newsroom. I'm like, send a push alert to Zap and basically all caps say, and put in there tornado emergency, seek shelter for Amory or Smithville.
Right. Truly doing anything we could to let these people know. I'm sitting there, not on camera at the time. Isaac's at the wall, looking at my laptop, looking at the reports. I see this clearly, a very bad situation, big tornado heading into a big population. And in that moment, I think to just get up from the desk, run to the other side of the studio and get on our computer and send the push alerts to our app from the weather side of things, just in all caps.
Because at this point, we're not predicting anymore. We are telling you
right.
what we're seeing
and
at this point.
We were near 100% certain that there was going to be a big tornado in Amory. And so when we have that high of confidence, we're basically just trying to do anything we can to to let people know, keep them safe.
I want to back up a little bit, because when we're moving into these events and you all are, a couple of days in advance, there's like that color-coded system that we're in that lets us know, what our chances are of what level of severe weather.
Yeah.
So how accurate was that going into this?
It was 5-6 days out. We were in a risk from the Storm Prediction Center, and then closer to the event, it was up at a level 4 for most of the viewing area. And I'd say, it was unfortunately a really accurate depiction, a really accurate forecast.
It was.
All right, so which leads me now to this conversation that we've had many, many times with our viewers, and that is having a plan, being prepared, because it can happen. So Ashley, what's the first bit of advice that you give people about being prepared for an emergency of this magnitude?
Definitely. Within any severe weather scenario, make sure you know the county you live in. I'm new to the area, and goodness knows I'm still trying to figure out our viewing area counties slowly but surely. But if you are within a situation, or you're traveling through and happen to get caught in a severe situation, you want to know what county you're in, and then you take that next step and go, okay, if I'm at home, what do I need? You want closed-toe shoes, tennis shoes preferably. You want flashlight, you want food, water that you can keep with you in case you get, trapped or removed from where you were taking shelter.
Another question that pops up a lot of time, Dylan, is what if I'm in my car? What if you're the person that's in the car driving along the highway?
Right.
What is my recourse?
And it's a scary conversation to have, truly, but there's not really many other ways you can put it. First thing, Ashley mentioned, know your county, know where you are, know what road you're on. A lot of times listening to the radio during severe weather is good, because if there's an alert, listening to the radio in your car, you'll be able to hear it.
Right.
If you know you're in the path of that storm, or it's around you, coming toward you, it's always best to not be in a car. And so we advise, at the next convenient location, pull off to the side, get in a site-built structure, whether that's a gas station. Gas station's better in a car, whether it's someone's house and you just have to knock on the door. I know that can be awkward, but do whatever you can. And at last resort, I know you may have heard just previously in the past, maybe your grandparents tell you, but getting out of the car and laying in a ditch away from the car, get as low as you can to the ground. That's better than being in a car when a tornado hits.
And I was in New Hope Elementary the day before on Thursday talking to second graders, and I took it upon myself. I'm like, do y'all know what to do during severe weather? I asked the children, and they all were like, oh, we go to the closet, or we go to the storm shelter. Or then at the end of the presentation, they were asked, well, what if this, and this? And I was, like he was saying, it's kind of a scary conversation to have, because I kept getting asked, well, what if I'm in the car? And they, in their mind, I think, well, why would I leave a dry inside of the car to go lay in a ditch?
Because it feels like that's a safe place to be, but it's actually the absolute worst place.
Yeah, from our earlier segment, we know it, of all of our, that cars can be easily
You saw the photo
tossed.
of the car in Wren, yes.
Yes. We, years ago, the Caledonia tornado, what we ended up seeing was a bus on top of a building.
Yeah.
So we understand the power of Mother Nature in these
sure.
situations. Well, again, appreciate the hard work
bet.
and getting out on the
Always.
ground to help as much as we can. We're going to be right back, talk about a little more about numbers, what we're seeing, and the way forward. We'll be right back. All right, to give you a better picture, sort of the scope of what we're dealing with, let's look at some of the preliminary numbers that are coming from the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. They're saying that Monroe County had 1,476 damaged homes, 29 roads, and 3 utilities. 50 people were injured in the county. 34-year-old Ethan Herndon and his 1-year-old daughter were killed in that Wren community by the twister. Amory schools are going to be closed through March the 31st. In Montgomery County, there were 49 homes damaged, along with 4 roads and 1 public office building. Again, these are preliminary numbers. They are expected to change as more damage assessments are being done. Now let's talk a little bit about getting assistance. Individual assistance from FEMA has been approved for storm victims in Mississippi. To get a jump start on your FEMA paperwork, there are some things you need to know, so pay attention to this. You must file an insurance claim first. You must also report your damage to the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. You can do that on the MEMA app. You can do that through your smartphone or other device you have. Once you are ready to complete your paperwork to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, you can call 1-800-621-FEMA. That number is on your screen, or go online to disasterassistance.gov. And the disaster number, once you get there, is DR 4697. Again, that number is DR 4697. And again, all this information obviously will be on our website for your reference. So let's talk about volunteers.
Yeah.
You all were there on the ground. You saw it up close and personal. We're looking at video. We're looking at pictures. You know there's a need for volunteers.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. I mean, any supply that the community could take up there. Dylan and I were talking about if we could just carry a couple cases of water up there, at the very least. That's if nothing else for the first responder workers that are still on the ground out there.
And it was hot. It was a hot day.
Yeah, it was in the 80s.
Yes.
And it was another
Folks were
eerie
working hard.
moment because the sky was so clear, so blue, and yet we were walking around, destruction.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned earlier in the broadcast about how the community just bands together, and I've been around here a good bit, and like that's the one thing that is always a mainstay is that the community comes together.
So people, again, already on the ground, they're providing water, they're providing clothing, those other essentials that people might need that you may not think about. So if you go to Red Cross, if you go to the United Way, all these places are coming together in Monroe County with these relief efforts. All volunteers, whether they're individuals or groups, should check with the United Way Volunteer Center across from the old National Guard Armory. So they want to make sure things are done in an orderly fashion. Like, don't just bring a bunch of stuff and dump it someplace.
You're right.
So you need to take it to the National Guard Armory. This is where they're having the Volunteer Center set up. By checking in and registering, volunteers can also be sent to areas that need the assistance the most. Also, there are federal and state dollars at stake if volunteer hours are correctly tracked. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes with this. Obviously, they want the help, but they want to get the proper documentation so that they can get those federal dollars that people need. You talked to the National Weather Service also. What did you get from them? Well,
They were getting there. They were about to be getting into a helicopter to do some aerial work as well. And I talked to the warning coordination meteorologist, and they look at a list of damage indicators. So they estimate based on the damage what the wind speed could have been. We have radar estimates, but they take into account a lot of things. How well was the structure built? How old was it? How new was it? Did the walls collapse? Did the tree debarking happen? Things like that. And
so
Todd,
that's how they come up with that EF rating.
correct. Right. Yes. And we were on the air, and we were looking at our radar technology, and debris was being lofted 20,000 feet. That doesn't necessarily say, okay, well, it's EF3 or it's EF5, but research has shown us that debris doesn't get lofted that high by a weak tornado. So we knew based on that it was almost a sure thing it was going to be a EF3
at least
or higher. But yeah, the Weather Service, they do a fantastic job coming back out, after the fact to look exactly, and because they got to come up with the numbers and the path, and everybody wants that information, and again, they do a great job with the survey.
I would say for the three of you going forward, and really for all meteorologists, this will be a learning tool going forward, seeing how this developed, how it played out, and then the aftermath.
Right. I mean, and I'm still in school at Mississippi State right now, and I was talking to my professor yesterday who kind of works with us on the green screen, helps us practice and stuff. And I said, "You're a great professor. I love you. You do great work, but nothing you could ever do would prepare me to cover 2 tornado emergencies in one night and see all this destruction and stuff." So it's truly just a life-changing experience. It really is something I'll never forget.
Yeah, and you come from Wyoming, where you weren't there, and they don't get that type of weather.
No, our thing up there was snow, and
Just did a 180.
Sure,
Yes,
snow
indeed,
can do some damage, but
nothing like what
nothing
we've seen
like
here the last
this.
couple of days. So in these few final seconds with them, I will remind you, do whatever you can to help. Please go to those places, the National Guard, if you want to go. There are ways for you to give money. I would just caution you to be sure that you're giving to a reputable organization, because unfortunately this is a time when scammers rear
Right.
their heads
And
and
I've
try to
already
take
started
advantage.
hearing about some
Yes.
that are popping up.
So be
tough.
very careful when donating money, but do what you can to help our neighbors. And thank you all again for joining me. I
You're so
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Of course, thank you.
All right, stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Daytime TV's #1 drama for more than 3 decades is hitting a major milestone. The Young and the Restless is celebrating 50 years on the air. That's half a century of epic romances, mysterious intrigue, and some bitter feuds. Daniel Bacchus has more on the show's ongoing success and what lies ahead.
Through more than 12,500 episodes, over 50 years,
You will never get her!
The Young and the Restless has taken viewers inside the lives of the residents of Genoa City.
To love and comfort you.
There's been no shortage of romance, rivalries, or heartbreak.
It's just an incredible honor. It's a real achievement that our show's been this successful this long.
Josh Morrow has played Nick Newman for nearly 30 years. Many of the show's actors have remained in their roles for decades.
It's just an incredible company and a big giant family, and we all, root each other on.
The Young and the Restless debuted March 26, 1973, after CBS tasked show creator William Bell with producing a soap that focused on younger characters.
Take one.
Their first half-hour episode featured disheveled drifter Brad Elliott, who hitched a ride from a trucker.
Where you headed?
Looks like Genoa City.
From there, the stories bloomed, these days revolving around Genoa City's 2 most prominent families, the Abbotts and the Newmans. Through the years, The Young and the Restless has kept generations of viewers engaged through interesting plot twists and groundbreaking and sometimes controversial storylines. The Y&R was the first to write a storyline about AIDS. It's also tackled alcoholism, same-sex marriage, sexual harassment, and date rape.
You just immediately feel so much pressure to get it accurate. God forbid, again, someone has been through this and they say that's not how it was, then it's all for nothing.
And was among the first to embrace diversity. Brittany Sarpy plays Dr. Elena Dawson.
Me coming on set and being a minority and being able to represent a culture that's not always on TV or wasn't always on TV is really important work.
But it's the daily dose of drama that viewers, cast, and crew hope never ends.
I grew up watching Young and the Restless with my mom, and so Young and the Restless has always been a part of my life.
Where the characters will forever remain young and restless. Danya Bacchus, CBS News.
And some other actors who've had roles on the show include Tom Selleck, David Hasselhoff, Eva Longoria, Justin Hartley, and Shamar Moore. All right, stay with us. We will be right back to wrap things up. All right, before we go, just one more reminder about personal assistance for storm victims. This is all on the WCBI website. Individual assistance from FEMA has been approved for storm victims here in Mississippi. To get a jump start on your FEMA paperwork, there are some things you need to know. Again, we're going to go over those. You have to file an insurance claim first. You must also report your damage to the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. You can do that on the MEMA app. And once you're ready to complete the paperwork to FEMA, you can call that number on your screen, 800-621-FEMA, or go online to disasterassistance.gov. Again, that's disasterassistance.gov, the disaster number, DR 4697. And again, all this information at WCBI.com. And we're all out of time. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.